Marko Dješka, you made a moving film, a film that I liked especially, called All Those Sensations in My Belly. Yeah. It's a film about a person who is transitioning from male gender to female, a transgender person. My first question is Mattia Anna Pleše a real person?
Yes, she is a real person, and it's actually animation documentary film. And also she is a narrator of the film, so like a protagonist. So we can hear her voice in the background explaining what is happening. And and with this animation, we try to depict these intense emotions like fear, disappointment, rage, sorrow, hatred, euphoria, and everything she felt during this process of interviewing, right?
Yes, but what brought you to this project especially?
Well, what brought you? That's a good question. Actually, I mean, I don't know how much you know about it, but Croatia in the last few years, the Croatian society has been witnessing a destruction of women's and LGBT people rights, orchestrated by political institutions, far-right NGOs and Catholic Church. And me as an artist and as a filmmaker, I just feel like kind of obligation to give this respond to it in a way to do a film about one subject which is present, but nobody talks about it. And it's transgender, transsexuality, and how people who are like transgender lives in this society. And Matija is perfect example because she lives in Zagreb, and she is from Zagreb. And actually, I wanted to have some protagonist which is from my city, you know. So
okay.
That's my goal.
You had to put yourself in Mattia's shoes. Nowadays, it's not easy to do a film or any kind of work about an issue or a reality which is not part of your life. So was it a challenge to achieve such a film? I presume that you had to work closely with Mattia and you had to trust each other.
Yeah, actually, I was very lucky with Matija. Before her, I went through several interviews with several other people because I had this on my mind this idea about this film before I met Matija. And then we applied with this film on the Croatian Audiovisual Center to get funding for this research because since it's a documentary, it's allowed to do it. And then I was interviewing people until I found Matija, because I wanted to find somebody who is like very extrovert kind of person, who is communicative, because animation really needs this kind of substance. You know, so she was perfect in the way that she wanted to share her experience, and she find this very interesting idea to make the film about this subject. You know, because it's also important for her. And for me, from my point, I mean, the first idea is to make film only about transition into another gender, but this film is actually a love story because it's actually mainly talking about Mattija's struggle to establish honest, intimate relationship with heterosexual men. And this problem is actually, we all have this kind of problems in relationships, you know, and this is something that I can get familiar with it, or a relationship in general, you know, people in general. So I think this is something that people can attach to it and to just witness her as a normal human being. You know?
So was she part of the creative process? Did she say this I like, this I don't like? So did you had to work together when editing, doing the film?
Yeah, we worked mostly she participated mostly in this interviewing part, and then when we was done with this interviewing, then we were like starting animation, and often I invite her to the studio, I don't know, several times per month, and she was always like very happy about everything she saw, and you know, I was also happy that she's satisfied, so we didn't have bigger change. The only thing that actually changed a lot is the amount of narrative, amount of her talk in the film, because more than 80% we need to remove, because since it's animation, it's not like classic documentary. Animation needs space to breathe, it needs to communicate with the audience. If you put a lot of sound, animation it doesn't look good. And we had this problem at the beginning because she talks a lot, and we had a lot of explanation about what is happening, and a lot of story there was much more detail in the story comparing with how much detail is now. So I just had to remove these parts, but still be caution that film still maintain the structure.
What is your target audience? Do you want, for instance, kids or teenagers or young adults to see the film? Should it be shown in schools?
I think, that's a good question. I think it should. I would be happy if it would be shown at schools. For example, festivals audience is also the target, because I would like to target people who, I don't know, maybe homophobic people or people with prejudice about this subject, but also general people who don't know about this subject. I think that many people are not familiar with what is happening, especially in Croatia, based on feedbacks by people from Animal Fest. People are not familiar with it. Even this is a subject which is actually all present,
Yeah.
So that basically the biggest goal will be hope that this subject will be available to people.
When I was preparing myself for this interview, I saw your previous film, Ghost Town. And there's a very interesting aesthetic difference between both films. Ghost Town is quite realistic, and it's like monochromatic, it's gray. And all those sensations in my belly, in that film, you use a sparse, very simplified style of animation where lines predominate. So what made you go for that style?
Well, my previous film I done myself in terms like animation and directing also, script writing, and also design. But this time I decided to do a move forward because this is more poetic kind of approach. And since I'm actually comic artist, basically my brain doesn't work in that way, So I know what I want to accomplish, but I don't know how. In the way that this transition between the shots, the expression of the characters, I wanted to give this to somebody else who is not even the professional animator, who have different kinds of thinking in the way of animation. So I collaborated with this girl, a Croatian illustrator, Hana Tintor, and she finished the school in Cambridge for illustration, and she came back to Zagreb, and she was very motivated to do animation, and she actually started animation with my film. So you can see that she is not, suppressed by these rules of animation. Her characters are stretching, faces are changing all the time. So I think that this is kind of an emotion I wanted to get in this film.
I totally agree. Yeah. Finally, you're at the head of an animation society called Adriatic Animation.
Yeah.
Yes, and the film was co-produced with Portugal. Why was it necessary to co-produce with another country, and how did it go?
Yeah, but in Croatia, it's kind of normal that we also search for co-production, because in the Croatian audiovisual center, we got only 50 to 60% of the money. And then we need to find more. If you need more money, then you need to find some co-production. And then we search for the partnership studio to wrap this pipeline and budget. And then we find the studio BAP Animation, which we know from before. And they were kind of similar with us in terms of which kind of films they make, which kind of hierarchy they have inside the studio. And we kind of matched. And since they got this amount of money, which could cover only the cost of making a music, so we did only music and the follies and other sound effects in Portugal.
Okay. Well, Marco, thank you very much for taking the time to talk with us. I wish your film a very good career. Please stay safe. And we hope to welcome you in Montreal in the near future.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Okay, goodbye.
Bye.
Mm-hmm.